Hey, kind of sporty people. It's Rach here, and today I'm going to share with you the 3 biggest mistakes I made and the lessons I've learned when getting back into basketball in my 30s. Now, while I'm talking about basketball, this really applies to any sport if you are a beginner or an adult looking to get back into sport after a long break. So if that sounds like you, keep on watching. Let's rewind 2 years, shall we? I had just turned 30, and about 9 months before that, I had just had my second child. I had spent almost the entirety of my maternity leave in COVID lockdown, and I was burnt out and I was isolated. But thankfully, we were slowly starting to emerge from pandemic life and things were opening up. So my brother and his wife visited, and we took the kids down to the park, and he ended up bringing a basketball. And so inevitably we ended up shooting around, just mucking around, having fun. And I instantly fell in love and remembered how much I had loved playing basketball as a kid, even though my brother, who's 8 years older than me, would wipe the driveway court with my butt. I spent the next 2 months shooting around at my local park at every opportunity I could get, basically using it as an excuse to get out of the house and have a break from the kids. Love you! I was really enjoying this newfound freedom and this new physical outlet. I was even toying around with the idea of signing up for a recreational basketball league. But I faced a few hurdles. Hurdle number 1, fitness. I really hadn't started getting back into any regular exercise since the birth of baby number 2, and I was in arguably the worst shape of my life. I was the heaviest I'd ever been and the least fit I had ever been. Hurdle number 2 was skill. I was basically a 10-year-old skill level playing in a 30-year-old's body, really not the ideal combination. Hurdle number 3 was knowledge. I could remember some of the basic rules, but if I'm honest, it was pretty hazy. And the last hurdle was confidence. Now, I'm a naturally outgoing person, but even for me, the idea of signing up to a social basketball league as a complete loner was super intimidating. And so I was feeling pretty nervous, if I'm honest. And so I did what any normal, digitally savvy person would do, and I jumped on Google. I found a social sport competition in my area, and they even had a blog post with all the rules of playing social basketball. It was a really long, dry read, if I'm honest. I did a quick YouTube search to find some pointers or tutorials on where to get started. Side note, that part of the internet is really macho and egotistical. There was not a lot of relatable beginner's content for someone like me. And so I figured that just jumping in would at least solve the skill and the fitness issue, so why not? So I signed up, paid the money for the season, and boy oh boy did I fail miserably. This leads me to mistake number 1, was assuming that I would learn on the fly as I played. The game is simply too fast-paced for that to happen. By the time the ref blew the whistle and I figured out what on earth he was saying I had done wrong, play had already started again, and there was no chance to really digest what was going on and understand the rules. And social sport is made up of busy people trying to fit sport into their busy lives, and so people aren't exactly willing to hang around for half an hour or an hour and give you a blow-by-blow of the game. At this point, it was sheer determination and cost that kept me playing. I had paid for the whole season, so I was going to play the whole season. But I can accept that most normal people may have just cut and run at that point to save face. Through all of the failing, I was having a ton of fun. And so I came to the realization that something needed to change if I was to really address these fundamental skills that I had missed, because it just wasn't happening on the court. This leads me to mistake number 2. I engaged a coach. Now that sounds like a great thing to do, right? I thought it was. I had just taken a promotion and I was working more hours than I'd ever worked before. And I was busy. I needed to pay someone to teach me the things I needed to learn. Seemed like a great concept. But it actually ended up being a pretty expensive mistake for me in the end. What I learned is that there are tons of coaches out there for intermediate players or players who are really hoping to make it big, and obviously that's not where I am. And really, beginners coaches teach kids, even when their website says all ages. There are very few beginners coaches who want to teach adults the fundamental skills later in their life. At least I never found one in my area. So despite the time and money commitment, I walked away from that coaching experience with still many of the same fundamental gaps in my understanding of the sport. And this leads me to the last mistake, mistake number 3. This mistake was not one that I necessarily chose, but it was the result of my poor planning. I got injured. I got shin splints, I sprained my thumb, I tore my calf muscle so badly that the only way I could get around the house was to crawl on my hands and knees. This was all before the day of my best friend's wedding, which I had to attend with a set of crutches. Not a great look. Confession time. I am a university-trained exercise physiologist. I should know better. But what's that saying? The cobbler's children have no shoes. It's like the story of the chef who gets home and cooks themselves 2-minute noodles for dinner. I really should have used my knowledge to plan out some training that would prepare me for the sport so that I could go in a little bit more physically able and physically ready for the demands of the sport. This has basically led me to where I am now, realizing that I have put the cart before the horse, and now it's time to take the cart and put it behind the horse. Spending some time amassing the knowledge that I need, teaching myself the rules and the fundamentals of basketball. I'm reading Basketball for Dummies. I'm watching those incredibly intimidating YouTube videos. And I've even completed an online basketball coaching certification. I'm writing my own beginners basketball training programs that I am running myself through, and I'm documenting some of that for this channel too. So in this video, I've shared with you my story about how I fell in love with playing basketball in my 30s and the mistakes I made jumping headfirst into a social league. I expected to learn on the fly, I paid too much money to the wrong people, and I got injured as a result of my poor planning. I'm turning this baby around by teaching myself what a beginner really needs to know when playing basketball. And I'm designing resources to help people like you and me get back into playing sport safely so that you can get Kinda Sporty and do it well. My dream is that Kinda Sporty will become a community and a place for people like you and me to find the skills and the knowledge, the best fitness advice, and the encouragement they need to take that leap into living a Kinda Sporty life. It'll be expanding into lots of other sports, not just basketball. But keep your eyes peeled, because my next video coming up is a crash course on what a beginner really needs to know before playing basketball, designed specifically for busy people like you and me. So if you're someone who feels like they've missed the boat on sport, I would love to hear from you. Comment below on what the sport it is that you're dreaming of playing or that you thought you'd missed the boat on. And let's get a conversation started about the things you can do now to get you better prepared to start playing again in your 30s. And consider subscribing if you'd like to follow along on this Kinda Sporty adventure.